I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Muslim Reformers versus Fundamentalists, no other than Mr. Eric Brazau.
Yes, thank you for having me here.
So, Mr. Eric, can you please introduce yourself?
Introduce myself. In brief, concerning the book and what it is that I do now, many years ago, I went to jail for Islamophobia here in Canada. I was very much, we could say, a person who was anti-Islam. Then things happened, and I realized that I had made that I could have made a mistake. So I went back to the drawing board to reassess all my opinions about the religion of Islam and what it is contributing to Western civilization. And I started to do study research. I started to listen to many YouTube videos of all of the prominent imams and scholars in North America, as opposed to, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia. I concentrated on North America and Canada. After doing that for about 4 or 5 years, running a very popular website and Facebook page, I then decided it was time to write a book. Now, in my research prior to writing the book, I noticed that, in essence, there are two types of Islam, or there's two Islams that people prefer. There's what we would call the progressive modern Islam, the Islam that says live and let live, we accept all homosexuals, we accept all identities, everyone has a right to believe in their own religion. There are those who promote that is Islam. And then there are those scholars, fatwa organizations, the Muslim Council of America, the Muslim Council of Canada, Canadian Council of Imams, who says something quite the opposite, and whose Islam, to most people, would represent either in whole or in part or a version of what we would call the ISIS al-Qaeda style Islam. And so I wrote a book in which we hear the two voices of the different Islamic voices at the two extremes, or what we would like to believe are the two extremes. And at the end of the book, it's left for the reader to decide which Islam is actually the louder voice within the Muslim community, which is the voice that actually speaks for the vast majority of Muslims. Is it the voice that we call the ISIS, Al-Qaeda, fundamentalist, extremist Islam, or is it the Irshad Manji who identifies as a gay, lesbian Muslim Islam, or Dr. Zuhdi Jasser who says his Islam is compatible with the American Constitution? And at the end of the book, the reader can decide. That's it.
So, Mr. Eric, what is the primary goal of Islamic reformers?
Repeat, sorry?
What is the primary goal of Islamic reformers?
The goal of Islamic reformers seems to be, to convince the general population that those that are called fundamentalists, the imams with the big long red beard, those who say that marrying, Aisha and all of that, and that gays should be thrown off rooftops, their goal is to say and to convince everyone that Islam is the wrong Islam, that it's a misrepresentation of the true Islam, and that their version of Islam is the correct version, and it is to some extent the responsibility of Western civilization to be tolerant and invest money and resources into helping them reform Islam to be what they say Islam should be.
So, how do Islamic fundamentalists view the interpretation of the Quran?
Well, it's not so. We can get into what is their interpretation of the Quran, but what I specialize in is what is it that they say. Well, it could actually ask maybe the same question. They say, and all of the madrasas here in North America and Canada say that Islam, they teach the children in all of the schools, and there's many schools that go from kindergarten all the way up until basically almost getting into university, that Islam is represented in the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Hadith, the Rashidun and the Sahaba, which is the very first, the people who lived right around the same time as the Prophet Muhammad. And that Islam is contained in the Hadith, which is basically Sunni Islam, or you can have Shia Islam, and Sunni and Shia, depending on which country you go to and which continent, represent 95 or 98% of all the Islamic mosques.
Mm-hmm.
So they categorically here in Canada made a point during or before June, the Pride Month, to say we reject homosexuality. Homosexuality is a perversion, and it is against our human right to have to accept this idea of homosexuality. And we say very clearly that homosexuality is a perversion, and that's my religion. And of course, there's many other details, but for the most, the general population, the idea that Islam categorically and absolutely rejects homosexuality is something that many do not want to accept that reality and want to believe that the only ones who actually believe homosexuals should be killed are those who live in Afghanistan and Pakistan and are called ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But that's not true. So the Islam, we have here an imam, we have an imam here in Colorado, Karim Abu Zaid, made it very clear that it is the Taliban's right, because they are the governing authority in Afghanistan, to force women to wear the hijab and the burqa and to make the laws of the land. And no Muslim should be against that, because every Muslim should love for the Sharia to be imposed. As well, it is the duty of every Muslim in the world to, as to the best of their ability, of course, to bring about Sharia rule to dominate over the land. So you have the two different voices. Now, the nice lesbian identifying homosexual Muslims and the liberal Muslims, they represent not even 1% of the mosques, not even 1% of the population. Whereas Canadian Council of Imams, who are a Sunni organization, represent maybe 90% of all of the imams in Canada.
So, Mr. Eric, what approach do reformers take towards modernity and technological advancements or advancements?
Again, I'm having difficulty. If you can repeat the question more slowly and more clearly, please. Sorry.
What approach do reformers take towards modernity and technological advancements?
No, Islam in general, from what I gleaned, does not really concern itself with technological advancements so much. For example, can Islam, or even whether it's the modern or the traditional, if you can use the internet or TikTok to promote Islam. However, it must be done in a halal way. So the problem for the mullah, the imams and the scholars, is Muslim women appearing on TikTok without a face veil, because that shows her face to many men, and that's the problem. Or if you have Muslim women appearing on TikTok without the hijab, that is haram. So technology can be used as long as it's used in a way that's Sharia compliant. Is that clear?
Yes, clear. So, Mr. Eric, how do fundamentalists generally view the role of women in society?
Women in well, women don't particularly have a role in society as such, because the role of women is to be the next generation, to create the next generation, which is to give birth and to maintain the lineage according to the patriarchy, the male. The idea of women in the public space, in the public square, the idea of women talking in the public square, being present in the public square, is antithetical to Islam. So right now, for example, many, like Imam Yasir Qadi, said very clearly, as do other imams, that for the moment they will accept women and Muslim women to be in positions of political power, or within, to move the situation along. But that in itself is haram. Segregation in Islam is very strict. There's a separate entrance for the men and the women going into the mosque. In the mosque, they are absolutely separated. In the home, if your brother-in-law is in your home, your wife must remain segregated. She's not supposed to be sitting around drinking coffee and laughing with everyone together. No, that doesn't happen. The women must be separate. There's a whole there's this whole doctrinal reasons as to why that should be. We won't get into that right now, but separation, boom. Women on one side, men on the other. In a wedding, women and men do not intermingle.
So,
If I
what?
tell the joke or say something and your wife were to laugh at my joke, that's a problem.
Hmm.
Segregation. To the point where if a man calls your house wanting to speak with you, if your best friend calls your house wanting, hello, can I speak with Jack? She is not supposed to be pleasant to him on the phone. She has to have a hard voice, a cold voice, and not be friendly to him, because she has to remain separation.
So, what
So
stands?
the idea of women is very different. Women are not so much seen as individuals, but they are seen as a method to produce the next Islamic generation.
So, Mr. Eric, what stance do reformers typically take on the compatibility of Islam with democracy?
Well, okay, so Islamic reformers have been on record saying that there are verses in the Quran that should be eliminated or reinterpreted. But of course, that's very difficult, since there are billions of Qurans in the world, and generations and scholarship which has been written for the last 1400 years is how to interpret certain verses and doctrine of the Quran and the Hadith. So the Muslim reformers, for the most part, are considered either kafir, heretics, perverts by the vast majority of the Muslim population. So if we take Zudi Jasser, Dr. Zudi Jasser, who features in my book, he's a primary reformer. He's founder of the organization Muslims or for Islamic Reform, compatible something with the democracy and Islam. I forget the name right now. He will say that my Islam is compatible with the Quran, and I learned that this is what Islam is from my family. Urshad Manji will tell us what Islam is according to her. Interesting to note, Urshad Manji, Zudi Jasser, as well as all reformers, very rarely, if ever, bring evidence from the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Hadith as to why they believe what they believe. So when Yasser Qadi, Bilal Phillips, Hakim Quick, any of these imams, all imams, when they give a khutbah, which is a sermon, and they preach, they will say, they will give they will say what they want to say, and they will say, and the hadith by Abu Hurairah, by Bukhari, gives us this evidence. The Sahaba gives us this evidence. The Quran says this. The reformers, not so much. They continually repeat what they think. They don't have too many scholars back 1,000 years ago, 700 years ago, who they can say also said the same thing. So, for example, there's now Muslims, I was looking at their website, Muslims, progressive Muslim values, something to that. And they go on at length about how the original Islam from the very beginning was friendly to LGBTQ and transgenderism. Some people might say that doesn't make sense because there might not have been this whole concept of transgender 1,400 years ago. Not so much anyway. There might have been none of it. It didn't exist. So it's almost to the sense where this is what they prefer and this is what they like, but they bring no evidence to back that up. So the equivalent would be I could say, do you know what baseball is?
Yes.
Okay. The original baseball did not have bases, and they played with a frisbee and not a ball. I could say that, but where's my evidence? But there is a game that you can play with a frisbee. You can play cricket without the bases, but cricket is not baseball, and frisbee is not baseball. They're different sports. So, interesting point that many imams do make in regards to the reformers is, look, if you want to have another religion, go ahead, be another religion, but do not say you're Muslim, because if you are homosexual, or if you believe in music or democracy or voting or women and men talking together in the street, you are not a Muslim. You can be something else, but you're not a Muslim.
So, Mr. Eric, before we go on, I want to shout out my listeners according to my ranking tops in the last 30 days, because in New Zealand I got 81% audience share, Tanzania 97, Egypt at 117, Moldova 126, United Kingdom at 189, Bahrain, Poland, and a lot more. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors all over the world, like Mr. Eric Banzo. So, Mr. Eric, what are the key issues that reformers seek to address with Islamic communities?
The main one is Islam is compatible with a modern Western civilization that is compatible to plurality. It's compatible with people leaving Islam. It's compatible with freedom of choice. Everything that's Western civilization is compatible with Islam. That's what they're telling us. And again, I come back to they represent less than 1% of the total Muslim population, less than 1% of the total mosques that preach this version of Islam. And the other version of Islam says very clearly, Islam is not compatible, or Western civilization is not compatible with Islam. Western civilization is a cesspool that must be destroyed and will be destroyed, and it is the duty of all Muslims to destroy. Now, I must add this. Hamid Abdul in Toronto, again a senior imam, said clearly, and as all Muslim scholars will say, Islam does not want to take over for the sake of taking over, but to improve the lives of people. That's why Islam came. And that's what Islam did at the time of the Prophet Muhammad. So, in some respects, Islam must take over, but it's taking over for the right reasons. And people will think that we're taking over, and yes, we are taking over, but it's for the benefit of mankind. So, when Muslims feel it is their duty to Allah to take over, to help civilization, from their perspective, church bells are evil. There's a hadith for that. Bilal Phillips makes it very clear. The church bells are the call of shaitan. Now, Bilal Phillips is not some crazy imam is somewhere in Saudi Arabia. No, Toronto, Canada, America, Sweden. He travels the world. He has a big university. He's very popular, very mainstream. So the difficulty is not many people really understand or bother to do the research. What's really being preached? What are they saying? What are they teaching? Most people just want to hear what the reformers have to say and leave it at that. And I bring it back to the example. Everybody understands that Nazism is a dangerous ideology. Do you agree? The Nazis, they say, many people will say that Nazism is a dangerous ideology. Correct?
Correct, yes. Correct.
I'm not saying it is. I'm saying many people will say it is.
Many people, yes.
It
majority of the people.
Pardon?
Because majority of the people, because once you say Nazi, they, go to Hitler.
Correct. But I'm saying the ideology of Nazism, I'm not talking about calling people Nazi, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that stupid argument. I'm saying the ideology of Nazism is dangerous.
Yeah, in your opinion, which is side of you? In your book, which side of you are talking about? You on the right or on the left?
Okay. Now you're asking a very interesting question. In my book, I'm on no side.
Okay.
I say this is what the fundamentalists say, what you call the fundamentalists, and this is what the reformers say. This is what the fundamentalists say. This is what the reformers say. Now, what I also show in the book is that when the reformers have a meeting or a discussion, there's 50 people, 75 people, 200 people, maybe, who will come to the library to listen to them speak.
Okay.
When the fundamentalists have a meeting, there's 50,000, 60,000 simulcast all over the world in the convention center over the weekend. That's the difference. So in the book, I take no side. I'm not on the right. I'm not on the left. If you want, we can have a private conversation about whether I'm on the right or the left. But for the purposes of the book, it's to show so if you are a person on the left or in the middle, you could read my book. If you're on the right, you could read my book. If you're on the left, you could read my book. So when the man talks about the shows that they talk about the lion is hunting the deer or the lion is hunting the antelope, right? He's not on the right, he's not on the left. He's not for the lion, he's not for the antelope. I mean, that's life. The lion is now eating the antelope. The lion is now putting his claws and he's ripping apart the antelope and he's eating him. Okay. That's just a fact. So I present the book. These are the facts.
Okay.
It's not for me to make a decision. Because is it good? Is it bad? Again, I come back to fire. Is fire good or is fire bad?
For sure. So, Mr. Eric, before we go on, I want to invite our listeners to please do support my audiobooks, people. One of the best sellers on Audible, and Stand Tall, Stand Together, available to purchase. Of course, my Book 101 review, Volume 3. This is all my 100 episodes of my first season of Book 101 review. And of course, my climate change book, Earth Fever, Unraveling Climate and Our Race to Restore Balance. And of course, my Book 101 Review Volume 2 Selected is all about, again, my 100 episodes of my first season, as well as my Book 101 Review Volume 1 Highly Recommended. And of course, my self help book, Threads of Existence, Waving the Tapestry of Life, and Life is Too Short, a journey of discovery, fulfillment, and joy. Please do purchase them, available on Audible, and they're one of the best sellers. So, Mr. Eric, what or how do fundamentalists interpret Sharia law in comparison to reformers?
Well, again, Sharia. Okay, Sharia is the law. So it's in how do fundamentalists interpret the Sharia? They interpret the Sharia to some extent, to a large extent, exactly the way you would expect would be done in Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, in Iran. The only point is to what extent can it be implemented? So, what you see in Iran, what you see in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, that's Sharia. No music, no alcohol, no dancing, no parties, no men and women mingling together. If you steal something, your hand should be chopped off. If you have sex or if you touch women, that could be a problem. If you have sex with a woman, you are stoned to death or killed with the lash, 100 lashes. That is Sharia. Reformers want to change that. Good luck. It would be nice if they could. I don't, many people don't see how it's even possible. It would be like trying to start a new Christianity without Jesus. It would be difficult. It wouldn't make much sense because Christianity has to have Jesus. So you cannot have Islam without Sharia because many imams will tell you Sharia is Islam, Islam is Sharia. They're one and the same.
Okay, so how do fundamentalists view Western cultural influences?
What do fundamentalists view are cultural influences?
Yes, Western cultural influences.
Oh, everything. Just fashion. For example, you're not supposed to wear your pants below the ankle because everything below the ankle is hellfire. Again, we come back to anything poetry that you think of, poetry about love or happiness or sadness, songs, music, sculpture, Michelangelo, paintings, the Sistine Chapel. All of it is Satan, Shaitan. Simple as that. It is the destruction of Western civilization as we know it, or what we consider to be Western civilization, must be destroyed in order for only Allah to be the only one who is worshipped. It is the duty of all Muslims to bring that about somehow. Now, I preface this by saying not all Muslims will do that. Because some Muslims, they don't care. They drink alcohol. They listen to music. They just live their lives to some extent. But there's a percentage who are 20 years old, 25 years old. They grow their beard and they follow and they believe that Muhammad flew 7 times up and down to heaven to have a conversation with God as to how many times Muslims should pray. They believe this. Absolutely. They believe in that the same way I believe I'm talking to you right now. It's a fact that I'm talking to you right now. It's a fact. I don't believe it. It's a fact. So for some Muslims, they believe as a fact that, yes, music is shaitan. It must be destroyed. Now, the problem becomes many people will say, well, everyone's allowed to have their own individual private belief, and maybe it's a funny belief. We don't like their belief, but why is that my business? And that's valid. If they want to believe it, let them believe it. The problem becomes, or starts, it is the duty of all Muslims to stop what is makruh, or haram, with their hands, if they have the power to do it. If they don't have the power to do it with their hands, they must do it through talking or through politics. And if they can't do it through politics or talking, they have to do it through their heart. But if they can do it with their power, they must. It is their duty.
So, Mr.
So,
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
no, that's
Yes,
it.
sir. So, Mr. Eric,
It's just a question of degrees of implementing what you can implement as you have the power to implement it.
okay. So, Mr. Eric, can you please invite our listeners to support your Muslim reformers versus fundamentalists?
It's just a book that's available on Amazon. You can get it through my website, ericbrazau.com. You can purchase it directly there, or you can get it through Lululemon. I'm not sure if that was the question you asked me.
Yes, where you can grab a copy of your book. Amazon.
You can grab it there, Amazon, Lululemon, or go to Eric Brazau, ericbrazau.com, as you see my name right there, and get it directly from my website.
Yes, people.
And it's also available on Amazon as an e-version,
Oh, ebook. How about
as an ebook. And if you go to ericbrazau.com, you can get the first 1 or 2 or 3 chapters for free.
okay, people, let's support Mr. Eric Brazau for this book because if you support him, more books to come.
Well, if I may say, it's not about supporting me, it's about supporting Western civilization, perhaps, and understanding more of how we can defeat the irrational fear of Islam and Islamophobia.
Yes.
Because as I always say, what is a phobia?
Okay.
It's an irrational fear, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if you eliminate the irrational, all you're left with is what is rational.
Certainly. So, Mr. Eric, thank you for your time.
You're most welcome, and have a good day. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. More to come, people. See you soon.